G'day guys, Dane here from Clarkey's NRL column. Welcome to the Round 5 wrap-up. I'll just be going over the results, giving my thoughts on the games for this episode. I won't be putting up League Lane with Dane tonight, guys. I've just been super busy today, and the show takes about anywhere between 3 to 5 hours for me to gather all of the research, and then another further 1 hour to record it and get it all how I like it, and then another further hour of editing. You factor on top of that, I'm also trying to call at least 2 players for each show, and one could be available in most cases at 8 a.m. in the morning, and the next at 4 p.m. So I'm sitting around waiting for the most of the day. I make it all for free. I can't afford to do that for much longer, so I'll just be doing the Round 5 wrap-up from now on, guys. Just purely because I can't stretch myself too thin, and I felt the last few episodes, sort of my content wasn't the best. I was deviating more for quantity as opposed to quality. So we'll go to Thursday Night Football, guys. The Brisbane Broncos defeated the West Tigers. Now, how I'm going to break down each game, I'll talk about each team and then give a little stat attack, a few stats to sort of paint the picture and wrap up my evidence altogether. So for the Broncos, very poor game defensively. The Tigers don't generally post a lot of 20-plus score lines. We saw that in 2018, and we've certainly seen it to start the year also. The Broncos have lacked a real leader out there in the last couple of weeks. I understand Darius Boyd is their most experienced player there, but I don't know if he's their captain. And what I mean by that, obviously he's their captain on paper, but I'm not sure he's providing the leadership such as someone like Sam Burgess does for the Rabbitohs. I'll use him as an example currently. Such as, let's go Panthers, that's a bad example. Who's another team that's going well at the moment, guys? Such as Boyd Cordner does for the Sydney Roosters, or Cameron Smith does for the Melbourne Storm. I don't think Darius Boyd is that man for the Broncos. I'm not sure if he's ever been that man for the Broncos since taking over the captainship role. And then we go to their spine, and particularly in the crunch time moments, I'm talking the last 10 minutes of each half where you really want to close out a half well. They were terrible. Some of the sets there between Milford and Nikorima were just simply laughable. I was sitting there and I actually said to my partner at the time while we were watching the game, after the Brisbane Broncos' second last set, I said the West Tigers will get the field goal this next set. It was that poor. I was incorrect. They got a try. They got one better. So there's something that needs to change in this Broncos spine. And a leader needs to emerge from this young Broncos team, because I don't think it's Darius Boyd. I'm just not certain as to what those changes need to be for their spine, guys. I would say Sean O'Sullivan should be getting close to coming in for his second NRL game. I like him at halfback. I think he's a good game manager. In turn, that allows Milford at 5'8" to implement his running game. At the moment, you've got 2 running halves. It's not working. I then like Cody Nikorima dropping back to 14 and coming on at about the 50th, 60th minute mark to replace Andrew McCullough, because I don't think you're getting enough out of McCullough purely just with his defense. Something has to change for the Broncos, guys. I'm not the coach, but there's some of my suggestions there. And we go to the West Tigers, guys. It was a great effort, in particular, as I touched on, winning the big moments. They scored twice with less than 3 minutes to go in both halves, Luke Garner and Michael Cheekham. I loved Josh Reynolds' enthusiasm here, guys. He was putting in a great kicking game, but what I really loved was he was the first person there to his kicks. You can never fault that guy on enthusiasm, and you can never fault him on effort. He was immense out there. I think Benji Marshall's really going to struggle to get back into this Tigers side. And then we go to Luke Brooks, and his game management was just superb. You could almost say the factor and the big reason why the Tigers won this was the Tigers' halves were great and the Broncos' halves were ordinary. And here we go for a bit of a stat attack, guys. Possession, completion, penalties, errors, missed tackles, they were all within 10%. They're obviously very key areas of a game. As I said, I think that really paints the picture that the Tigers just outed the Broncos in the big moments of this game, in particularly in closing out halves. Then we went to Friday Night Footy, guys, and obviously I really enjoyed this first game. For the Titans, a win is a win, especially when you're 0-4. The Titans' effort can't be faulted in this game. It was there, and in some stages, in particular after Jared Wallace, unfortunately, it was deemed a shoulder charge. After he put that big hit on, the Titans forward pack, really fired up and were really focused for that period. And that's where they sort of stuck their nose in front and started to, I guess, go a long way to winning that game. It was a scrappy game, guys, but the Titans just tried harder. You could tell they wanted it a little bit more than the Panthers did, and that's why they walked away with the 2 points. For the Panthers, guys, I'm going to be critical here. I was critical last week, even though they got a win, so now they've got a loss. You can understand this. Just terrible. Absolutely terrible. 5 games of professional rugby league, guys, and they have 3 tries from their 1 to 7. 2 tries were against the Titans, the worst defensive team in the competition. Up until that point, they had 1 try last week in round 4. In the 79th minute, it was Dylan Edwards crashing over. And they have the New South Wales Blues halves, guys. And that is not good enough. Quite simply, you cannot have 2 representative halves and be scoring not only minimal points, but not even scoring from your back line. Just terrible, guys. The halves pairing is not working, and you can mark my words here, guys. Either James Maloney or Nathan Cleary, if not both, mark my words, one of them will miss Origin this year because that combination is not working. Even Freddie Fittler, the New South Wales Blues coach, has come out and said it didn't really work last year in State of Origin either. Now, we know Freddie values loyalty, but if he's come out and said that, I can almost guarantee Kiri takes one of their spots. They completed 82%, guys. That's a lot better than they completed it last week. Last week was about 58%, I believe. That's just off the top of my head. I could be incorrect with that. But that's an improvement. But it's still not good enough. I think they increased that completion rate there, but they went back to football. It was far too simple to do so. In turn, the Titans were able to mount a comeback and take away with this one. Let's go to some stats, guys. The Titans, 67 tackle breaks, which equates to 67. Almost 70 missed tackles from the Penrith Panthers. That is absolutely disgraceful. I certainly can't remember a game where I've seen a stat that concerning. To me, that is the worst stat to come from 2019 so far. Let's stay on Friday Night Footy, guys. Let's go over to the Storm versus the North Queensland Cowboys. As I just do a little bit of adjusting here so I can tap the keys and also read my notes. Storm, too clinical, as always. They're the clear benchmark still in this competition. If not one, the Roosters are the other benchmark. They're very similar, guys. They're definitely both headed for the top 4 this year. And they're the only undefeated team still here in 2019. Now, with Cameron Smith on the cusp of a record-breaking, becoming the NRL's all-time point scorer, you had the feeling that this win was coming. But that doesn't make it any less impressive. The Storm weren't at their best on Friday night, guys, but they proved they don't need to be at their best to beat a lot of teams in this competition. The Storm, for how clinical and great they are in big moments, they only have to play at, 65% of their potential to beat most teams in or outside of the top 8. They are that clinical. Great performance by the Storm. And for the Cowboys, they're struggling with their back line here, guys. I couldn't put a finger on it last week. I knew, obviously, we all know something's wrong there. And I watched this game extra close, guys. I've studied these stats a little bit more in depth for you guys. 260 meters from their back 3 of Ben Hampton, Nene McDonald, and also Tamir Martin. That is not good enough, guys, especially when we know that premier back 3 backs such as Tuivasa-Sheck, Tedesco, and Ferguson, they get close to 260 meters regularly. And the Cowboys are just hitting that number with all 3 of their back 3 combined. It's not good enough. Now, they will welcome Kyle Feldt back this week, likely. He's coming back from a groin injury. How much he involves himself and whether he makes an immediate impact, I don't think so. Maguire is trying his hardest to emulate Jason Tamalolo. He ran for 180 meters, but they weren't inspiring meters, guys. They were gritty meters up the middle, whereas Tamalolo can play on the edge. He can play in the middle. He's going to bend that line, and in bending that defensive line, the next forward sees, okay, their line isn't fully set. I want the next hit up. And it's sort of inspiring because the other forwards, in particular the edge forwards, Hess and Cooper, can jump on the back of Tamalolo's 180 metres, let's go, even though he probably runs for more. But they can't do that with Maguire because they're gritty, constant hit-ups through the middle. For some stats here, guys, Storms had more errors. They had a lower kick percentage diffused. They had less possession. And they completed their sets at a lower percentage than the Cowboys. So I think that goes back to my point. The Storm don't have to be at their best to beat most teams. And here's another interesting stat here, guys. My handwriting is terrible. Sorry, I had to pause there. The Storm played the ball 1 second faster on average across the whole 80 minutes. They played it, took 3 seconds, took the Cowboys 4. 3 seconds is the higher end, 4 seconds is the lower end in the NRL. But what it does show is the Melbourne Storm's wrestle around the ruck does work, and it's still working. We'll go to Saturday, guys. Now, the Rabbitohs versus the New Zealand Warriors, result on screen. Rabbitohs shown their class, and they proved to me they can beat anyone on any day. Walker and Cook were just simply phenomenal. That combination has had years together now, and it's really, really working. I mean, 4 tries by Cody Walker. If that doesn't paint that picture, I don't know what stat will. They did lack focus at crucial times throughout that game, but ultimately they found a way to win, which is very impressive because when you go back to their final elimination match last year against the Roosters, they also lacked focus at times, and in the end they weren't good enough to sort of play their style of footy and pull away with a win regardless. This year, we've seen the Rabbitohs against the Titans, almost against the Sea Eagles, and now against the Warriors, sort of lack that focus at times, but ultimately they're able to implement their game when it matters most. For the Warriors, I thought they were the better side on Saturday, guys. They were probably unlucky to lose. Very impressive performance by the Warriors, especially when you consider Blake Green was ruled out moments before kickoff. So they had to reshuffle the entire team. They had to regroup, refocus. Everything that you've worked on all week at training, it's out the window. And Chanel Harris-Tavita, in just his second NRL game, is your chief playmaker. And I also thought he was very impressive to almost lead his side to victory, purely off the back of him and just his second NRL game. Like I said, guys, the Warriors were the better team. They were probably unlucky to lose this one. There's nothing of interest here, guys. It's very similar across the board. Probably the only stat I'd like to put my finger on was the Rabbitohs with 150 more kick meters. We can put that down to Adam Reynolds being a veteran, knowing where to place his kicks away from the back three, whereas Chanel Harris-Tavita's in his second NRL game. That's an area that he'll need to focus and keep developing. But again, given everything he had to do, there's not too much wrong with that stat there, guys. We'll stay on Saturday. The Manly Sea Eagles, they out the Newcastle Knights at the Knights' home ground. I'll start with Manly. Now, they made it 3 in a row, and they just wanted it a little bit more than the Knights. You got that feeling. It didn't matter that it was the Knights' home ground. Manly rocked up. It was Daly Cherry Evans' 200th game, and they wanted to win for their skipper. How good was Adam Fanua-Blake and Martin Tapau? They were the motor for this team. They got the team rolling. I thought they were absolutely phenomenal. I thought they were superb for most of that 80 minutes. Now, I thought the Manly Sea Eagles would struggle without Tom. I was wrong. They simply changed their play style. Guys, instead of playing around the edges and then having your forwards through the middle, they played sometimes to the edges, but predominantly through the middle off the back of Tapau and Fanua-Blake. And this is certainly something you can do when you have the Australian halfback Daly Cherry Evans in your side, because DCE steered that ship very well. He has done all year, and they just adapted. They were versatile, they adapted, they played through the middle, and they won that game. Very impressive performance for Manly. For the Knights, so very disappointing. I don't ever like to single out people, and I said this last week because I had a hunch the media, I'm talking mainstream media, would jump onto this. They haven't yet, which is somewhat surprising. Mitchell Pearce is not handling sole captaincy of this Knights side. He's not leading them around and steering the ship as he should as the halfback, but in terms of a captain, he's not providing the leadership that this young team needs. And it's quite strange that a lot of their players are playing below par, because they have so much depth sitting there in the New South Wales Cup with NRL experience or people that are ready for the NRL. So overall, it was a disappointing team performance. Nathan Brown, you could argue he's not handling expectation. This is his first year in a while as an NRL coach where his side has been expected to push for the top 8, and they don't look like that side yet. Let's go to their outside backs, guys. Kalen Ponga was the only back, 1 to 7, to run for over 100 metres. He ran for about 160, I believe. I think Pearce had around 100. Maybe he had about 105. He was just over the mark, if so. So they need to step up, especially their wingers there. I didn't see Edric Lee and I didn't see Sean Kenny-Dowell early in sets, taking that early hit up like we see from some of the best wingers. Let's go Ken Mamalo, let's go David Fusatua, let's go Blake Ferguson, let's go Nick Kotrick, let's go Campbell Graham. Let's stop there. You get the point. There's a lot of wingers that come in and take that early hit up. Kenny-Dowell and Edric Lee failed to do so, and in turn their forwards had to work harder around the middle. I go back to the Seagulls, guys. I said they won through the middle purely because Newcastle was a little bit more so tired having those early hit-ups. Not having those early hit-ups, apologies. And then if I had to target one other person from the Knights, I'm not convinced Mason Lino is a genuine NRL half just yet. From what I've seen so far, he appears to be the sort of guy that's just going to fill in from New South Wales Cup when required. For the stats, guys, it was super close across the board. There was no blaringly obvious stats to point out there. And for the last game of Saturday, guys, we'll touch on the Roosters first. My prediction here was they have the ability to frustrate the Sharks. I saw the game, the first 30 being very competitive. And then I saw the Roosters sort of frustrating the Sharks with a grinding play style and the Sharks giving errors, giving away penalties, etc., etc. That didn't really occur. The Roosters just outclassed them from start to finish. Keary, again, absolutely unbelievable. Blues, lock him in now. I'm a Queenslander, but he'll be there. He has to be there. Very good early signs for the Roosters for a side that's in the quest to go back-to-back. We saw, well, let's go with the team they're versing, for example. Cronulla Sharks, the year after they won the premiership, they were a little bit lackluster, a little bit underwhelming because they had that target on their back. They could no longer play, I guess, to 90% of their potential and still win games because other teams were giving it 110%. A very great sign for the Roosters. They've only lost one game all year. That was round 1. Certainly, they're looking like a top 4 side and they do have a big chance to go back-to-back. For the Sharks, I thought they lacked a little bit of direction. They got a little bit rattled after the first half. Now, they didn't score any points in the first half. When that happens, you come out in the second half feeling refreshed, feeling, ready and up for it. And then the Roosters put 2 more quick tries on them. And from there, if you're the Sharks, you sort of, as a football player, I feel at least, you feel yourself starting to slip out of that game. And you more so get away from your game plan. You start trying to play expansive football. And the frustration creeps in and it all just goes downhill from there. It was a close game. At stages, the Sharks looked like they were in the competition, but that wasn't consistent. And for a whole, the Roosters generally put in an 80-minute performance here. The Sharks didn't look terrible with saying that. They just weren't good enough to beat the 2018 reigning premiers. I'll move on onto some stats here. So, have a look at this one, guys. So the Roosters had more penalties and more missed tackles. They had less sets. They had less completed sets, sorry. They had less possession and less tackle breaks, which also means they had more missed tackles, as I said. They're just a team that knows how to win, especially of recent times, guys. So for the Sharkies, as I said, they didn't look terrible. They just weren't good enough to beat the benchmark team of the competition right now. We'll go to Sunday, guys. Now, for the Dragons, the spine is working. Their team is playing their best footy. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Dragons go on a bit of a run here, guys. Because we look back to past seasons, 2018, 2017 in particular, very, very strong at the start of the year. We haven't necessarily seen that so far this year, but if one team can put together a lot of early form and kick on early in the competition, we know it's the Dragons if history is anything to gauge off. Both their halves, the Dragons, both ran for over 100 metres, which is just great. Ben Hunt, Corey Norman play their best footy when they're engaging the line and they're running the footy. Both of them do. Typically, if you go through both their careers, they've both been very strong running halves for the whole of it. So it's really great to see them returning to that. And for the Bulldogs, just terrible. Just terrible. They never look dangerous or composed through this game. They have two very inexperienced halves at the moment in Lachlan Lewis and Jack Cogger, and that doesn't help. It just doesn't help when the scorecard goes against you and you can't seem to get your sets completed or play the footy you want to play. That was a 2018 Bulldogs performance, very underwhelming. This could be where the Bulldogs start to struggle again, and then we see Dean Pay make some radical changes, and then we see the Bulldogs return to form. Because at this stage, they've got the Rabbitohs next week. I don't think they beat the Rabbitohs. And then you're looking at 3 losses in a row. Does Dean Pay make more changes like he did last time he sparked a bit of form? Or does he stick with this team? I don't know. All I know is I would hate to be Dean Pay with this Bulldogs team. Just a terrible performance after, realistically, they were the better side against the Melbourne Storm last week and took them almost to golden point. And then they dish this up. I'd hate to be a Doggies fan. The Dogs completed, for the stats guys, the Dogs completed at their lowest percentage all year. They had 3 more forced dropouts. Dragons didn't have 1, but they just weren't able to build any pressure. They kept making errors, and they missed 36 tackles to the Dragons, only missing 11, which is a very impressive stat. Let's go to the last game of the round, guys. I've been rambling on for over 20 minutes now, so I do apologize. Hopefully you're still here and with me. Raiders. They came into this game on a wave of confidence, and I tell you what, they have left with a ton more. That was a clinical performance, and it put them in the top 4. Williams will continue to keep Caesar in reserve because there is a different feeling to this spine with him there. Charles Nickel-Klogstad continues to impress. He ran for the most meters of any back in both sides. So we've got CNK at the back, very damaging ball runner. We've got Jack Whiten in 5'8", very damaging ball runner. And we have Sam Williams, not a damaging ball runner, but a very, very great controlling half. And then we have Josh Hodgson in hooker, another game-controlling member of the spine. And when you put Caesar back in that mix, you leave Josh Hodgson as the main orchestrator, which can work for some teams. It works for the Melbourne Storm. They do it with Cameron Smith. Cameron Smith is also the greatest player we've ever seen in this game. That blueprint will not work for most teams. It will not work for the Raiders. They need at least one of their halves to be a game manager. And Williams is that. And Caesar isn't. Caesar is an average game manager, but he's a great runner of the footy. So Sam Williams has to stay in this side, guys. This Raiders side looks very good at the moment. For the Eels, it was a letdown performance. That was the Eels of 2018, not 19. Their halves never engaged the line. They have less than 50 metres between Mitch Moses and Salmon. Less than 50 metres, guys. They did not engage the line. Catch and pass footy stops working in under 11s. Newsflash, it doesn't work in the NRL. You need your halves to engage the line. And in case I need to go back, guys, to the result only 2 hours before this game, I will. 40-4. You know why? The Dragons halves engaged the line. 0-19. 0. Because the halves didn't engage the line. Very disappointing performance by Mitch Moses and Salmon there. But they do have some genuine excuses, I suppose, because their best player, Blake Ferguson, only played 45 minutes. Half of those minutes were injured. Overall, I think it's a night to forget to the Eels. I don't think this is the 2018 Eels just yet. I think they need to move on from this performance. Just let it go. And just move on to next week and just completely throw this one out the window. For the stats, Raiders dominated possession 57% to 43. They also completed 18% higher. They had 500, half a kilometre more run meters. And the Eels had 52 missed tackles with 18 errors. Overall, you play like that, you close the book on any chance to win, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed my round 5 wrap-up, guys. That's all I've got time for today. As I said, this is likely going to replace League Lane with Dane because I just can't commit 10 hours a day for something I'm not getting paid for anymore, and something that's not hugely popular. I mean, it only gathers about under 2,000 views weekly, which is very poor for some of my other videos and how high they go. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Let me know your thoughts on the round 5 games in the comments if you like. And I'll see you guys tomorrow on Tuesday with my tipping video for round 6. Cheers, guys.